I never thought I'd have to doubt them, Liam and Chloe. If you asked me back then, I would have said they were the two people I trusted most in the world. Liam knew the way I liked my tea, strong with just a hint of honey. And Chloe? She was there the day I lost my dad, holding me through the silence like only a real friend could. So when she handed me her tablet that night to cue up a playlist, I didn't hesitate. I tapped the screen with zero suspicion, until it opened to something I was never supposed to see. At first, I couldn't process it. My name wasn't in the thread, but Liam's was, and so was Chloe's. The messages weren't just flirty. They were intimate, detailed, familiar in the way that only time can build. Photos, late-night plans, phrases like, "can't wait for next time," and "last night was magic." My hands froze, but my eyes kept going, like some part of me needed to feel every cut. Every confirmation. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a double life, right under my nose, hidden behind trust. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I put the tablet down gently, like it might shatter into pieces if I moved too fast. Inside, I felt like I had already shattered. But outside, I was calm. I'd learned a long time ago how to keep my face still when the world around me spun out. Chloe was just a few feet away in the kitchen, humming like she hadn't just destroyed the only real friendship I thought I had left. That's when something in me clicked. I wouldn't confront them. I'd do something better. I went through the rest of that night like I was wearing someone else's skin. Smiled when Chloe joked about something on TV. Nodded when Liam texted me goodnight, like he hadn't just left her place. Every word from them felt like a performance now, and suddenly I wasn't in the audience anymore. I was backstage, seeing the wires, the tricks, the lies, and it made me feel sick, but also clear. I knew I couldn't explode. That would make me the villain in their twisted little play. So I started replaying everything in my mind, the missed calls, the last-minute plan changes, the subtle glances I brushed off as nothing. I remembered a weekend Liam claimed to be visiting his sister, but Chloe had canceled our brunch the same day. God, how did I not connect the dots sooner? I felt stupid, yes. But more than that, I felt underestimated, like I was just a placeholder in my own story. And I refused to let that be how this ended. They thought they were careful. They thought I was clueless. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not the betrayal itself, but the ease with which they assumed I'd never find out. As if my love made me blind. As if loyalty made me weak. I wasn't weak. I was grieving something I hadn't even lost yet, the version of my life I thought was real. But while they were busy crafting a lie, I started drafting something too. Something deliberate, quiet, and far more satisfying than confrontation. They had each other. Fine. But I had the one thing they didn't. The truth. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there in the dark, staring at the ceiling like it held answers. My mind kept looping through the images, the messages, the way Chloe laughed in the kitchen while I sat with her betrayal in my hands. But beneath the ache in my chest, there was something else. Something steady. I wasn't going to fall apart. No, not for them. I had done that before, for less. This time, I would stay still long enough to let something colder take root. By morning, I knew exactly what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't confront. I wouldn't give them the performance they were secretly bracing for. They didn't deserve a moment of my vulnerability. What they deserved was silence, the kind that says, "I know," the kind that lingers long after the room clears. That's the thing about silence. It creates space. And in that space, I started to build something. Not revenge exactly. Something cleaner, smarter, sharper. I left the tablet untouched. I didn't delete the messages. I didn't even close the thread. I wanted it to sit there, like a ghost they couldn't see. I smiled at Chloe the next time I saw her, and I kissed Liam like nothing had changed. Let them believe they were winning. Let them bask in the illusion. Because deep down, I had already turned a page. The chapter they thought they were writing, it wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. And it was just getting started. The first thing I did was stop texting back so quickly. Not enough to raise alarms, just enough to shift the rhythm. I told Liam work was draining me, told Chloe I needed space to rebalance. They bought it without question. That's the funny thing about guilt. It makes people want to believe you're okay. They were too distracted by each other to notice the small exits I was making. Little by little, I started leaving the version of my life they'd built for me. I took time off work. A mental health break, I called it. Everyone thought I was taking care of myself, and in a way, I was. But really, I was creating distance. From them. From who I was when I didn't know the truth. I started saying no to things. Dinners, plans, birthdays, even the digital ties began to break. I unfollowed them both quietly, archived our photos, muted their posts. No drama, just air. It felt like unclenching a fist I didn't know I'd been holding for years. And then it happened. They went public. A photo of the two of them at some rooftop bar, holding hands like they hadn't been hiding it for months. The caption read, "Sometimes life brings you what you least expect." I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt, not anymore. I stared because it confirmed exactly what I'd suspected. They thought they'd gotten away with it, that I was gone, that I'd moved on in blissful ignorance. And I let them think that. I needed them comfortable. I needed them smiling. It was surreal, watching them step into the light as if nothing was rotting underneath. Chloe's grin, Liam's arm around her waist, they looked like a couple plucked from a Pinterest board, and I could have exposed them right then. I had the receipts, the screenshots, the truth. But I didn't. I wasn't interested in wreckage for the sake of noise. What I wanted was impact, precision. I wasn't going to shout into the wind. I was going to wait until the wind carried my voice exactly where it needed to go. People started asking questions. Mutual friends noticed the silence. "Have you seen Liam and Chloe's post? Are you okay?" I gave the same answer every time. I'm focusing on myself. And that wasn't a lie. For once, everything I did was for me. Every hour of distance gave me more clarity. I stopped trying to process it through tears and started shaping it through strategy. I didn't want closure. I wanted control, and I was getting it, day by quiet day. Then came the invitation. Cream cardstock, cursive font, a little too proud for something so fragile. "We'd love to celebrate our love with you," it said. Celebrate. Love. The words made me laugh out loud, a short, breathy sound that surprised even me. I turned it over in my hands, heart steady, fingers deliberate, and I RSVP'd yes. Not because I wanted to watch them play house, but because they'd just handed me the stage they didn't know I'd already claimed. I think what unsettled them most was my silence. They must have expected some fallout, an angry text, a dramatic confrontation, maybe even a teary breakdown. But none of that came, just stillness. And in that stillness, I watched them reveal more than they realized. Every picture they posted, every happy couple moment they curated, it was all proof of how confident they were in the lie they'd buried. They thought I was gone, emotionally erased. And that suited me perfectly. There's a kind of power in letting people believe they've won. You can move without being watched. You can plan without interference. While they were out choosing florals and tasting cakes, I was gathering memories they'd forgotten existed. Pieces of a puzzle they assumed would stay lost. I knew they'd want a big day, full of spectacle, attention, a celebration of the image they built. And I knew they'd invite me as a formality, a gesture of false goodwill. They never imagined I'd show up with something of my own. Accepting that invitation didn't come from spite. It came from something deeper. I wanted to look them in the eye, not with rage, but with calm. The kind of calm that only truth brings. I wasn't there to ruin their day. I was there to complete the story. My story. And as the date circled closer on my calendar, I started outlining exactly how I would tell it. Not through words, but through timing. The same way their lie unfolded, quietly, beautifully, and without warning. Planning it felt strangely therapeutic. Not in a petty way, not like revenge. It was more like assembling a story that had always been mine to tell. I started with the basics. Screenshots, timestamps, the earliest message I could find, dated months before they ever went public. Hotel receipts, calendar overlaps. It wasn't hard to gather, not when people leave digital footprints like breadcrumbs. Every piece I found gave me back a little more of myself. It reminded me, I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining any of it. They wanted a tribute video for the reception. Something sweet, something nostalgic. It was almost laughable. They even asked if I'd help collect photos from the old days, since I'd known them both forever. I said yes, of course. Smiled through the call, jotted down the deadline, and thanked them for trusting me with something so special. And in a twisted way, it was special. It would be the most honest moment of their entire wedding, the only thing that wouldn't be covered in fake smiles and filtered perfection. I knew exactly how to build it. The opening would be warm. Old photos of the three of us, inside jokes, birthday parties, memories that looked golden from the outside. Then slowly, the shift. A late-night message, a suggestive selfie, a booking confirmation at a hotel 3 hours from town, a date stamp that matched the night before what would have been our anniversary. It would unfold the way I experienced it, slowly, painfully, undeniably. They wanted their guests to see a love story, so I'd show them one, just not theirs. I didn't rush through it. Every edit, every frame was intentional. I layered in soft music at first, something tender, almost cinematic. It had to feel real, because it was. But as the images shifted, so did the tone. I chose silence for the first reveal. No soundtrack, just the cold, undeniable presence of their own words on the screen. I wasn't trying to humiliate them. I was holding up a mirror, one they had been avoiding for months. This wasn't about vengeance, it was about reality, finally unedited. Getting the video into the rotation wasn't as tricky as I'd expected. Turns out, weddings are chaos, and everyone assumes the best of everyone. A mutual friend, someone who didn't know the full story but had always thought Chloe was a little too polished, helped me pass it off as the couple's chosen file. The wedding planner never even asked questions, just nodded, smiled, and added it to the queue. It felt surreal, watching how easy it was to rewrite what they thought they'd already controlled. I rehearsed it in my mind over and over, the moment it would play, the flicker of confusion on Liam's face, the realization hitting Chloe mid-toast. I didn't imagine shouting or scenes or chaos. I imagined stillness, the kind that happens right before something breaks, that moment of suspended breath when people are too stunned to speak. I wasn't planning on staying for that. I didn't need applause or confrontation. I just needed it to land. I needed them to feel what it was like to have the truth arrive without warning. There was something poetic about it, really. They handed me the very platform I needed, gift-wrapped, with RSVP and video request. It wasn't revenge dressed in rage. It was truth, dressed in gold trim and calligraphy. I didn't need to hack into anything or sneak around in shadows. They invited me to the altar, and I simply accepted. That's the part that still makes me smile. Not because it's cruel, but because it's clean. They set the stage. I just adjusted the lighting. In the days leading up to the wedding, I felt oddly calm. No racing heart, no second guessing. Just this quiet certainty that what I was doing mattered. Not just for me, but for anyone who's ever been lied to and made to feel crazy for sensing it. I wasn't just telling my truth. I was telling the truth. The kind that doesn't need to scream to be heard. The kind that settles in people's minds and lingers, even after the party ends and the lights go out. The morning of the wedding, I got ready like any other guest. Simple dress, soft makeup, a quiet confidence in my chest. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone whole, not someone broken or bitter. I was walking into a celebration, yes, but not theirs. Mine. The moment I stopped needing closure from them, and created it for myself. They'd get their vows, their toasts, their dance. And then they'd get my gift. Honest, unwrapped, and perfectly timed. The ceremony itself was everything you'd expect. Sunshine, flowers, vows rehearsed within an inch of their meaning. I sat there quietly, watching them promise forever, with voices that didn't tremble. Liam looked proud. Chloe looked radiant. People around me whispered how perfect they were. I smiled politely, hands resting in my lap, heart steady. No one knew what was coming, not even them. That was the beauty of it. They thought the hardest part was over. In truth, it hadn't even begun. After the cake was cut and the first dance done, the MC grabbed the mic with a grin. "Before we move on," he said, "we have a little surprise, a tribute from someone who's known the couple a long time." I saw Chloe glance around, curious. Liam raised his glass. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered. And for the first few seconds, it was everything they expected. Smiling snapshots, inside jokes, the golden haze of shared memories. The crowd cooed. Someone clapped softly. But then, the tone shifted. A screenshot appeared, no filter, no context needed. Just text bubbles laced with affection, sent during a time they weren't supposed to be anything. Then came more. A hotel booking, a time-stamped message, a photo Liam had once claimed he'd taken for work. I didn't have to look at them to know the moment it hit. The silence in the room was thick, like everyone had inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. The air changed, the mood cracked, and just like that, their fairy tale stopped playing. I didn't turn around to look at them. I didn't need to. I could feel it, the shift, the weight. You know that kind of silence that isn't really quiet? The kind that buzzes with everything unspoken, like static in the air? That's what filled the room. A guest 2 tables over dropped their fork. Another let out the softest gasp, like they were afraid to breathe too loudly. The music had stopped long ago, but the tension played louder than any soundtrack ever could. On screen, the timeline was clear. The story told itself. I didn't add voiceover, didn't insert commentary. Just the dates, the messages, the photos that contradicted their carefully curated beginning. It was chronological. I didn't need to twist the knife. The truth did it for me. Somewhere near the end, someone whispered, "Is this real?" And that's when the tears started. Chloe's, I think. Or maybe someone else's. The sound of it, quiet, broken, cut sharper than any confrontation could have. Liam didn't move, at least not while I was watching. His face had gone so still it was almost expressionless, like someone bracing for impact. Chloe's hand was at her mouth. The guests looked back and forth between them, unsure whether to say something or stay seated. I stayed in my chair a moment longer, not smiling, not crying, just still. And when the lights began to lift and heads began to turn, I stood up, calmly, confidently, and walked out the side door before anyone could speak my name. The hallway outside was quiet, almost peaceful. I could still hear the muffled buzz from the reception, voices rising, someone shouting my name, chairs scraping across the floor. But I didn't stop. I didn't need to see the aftermath. That moment wasn't about confrontation. It wasn't about witnessing their collapse. It was about release. I wasn't there to break them down. I was there to lift myself out. And the second I crossed the threshold, I felt lighter than I had in months. No one followed me at first. Maybe they were too stunned. Maybe they knew better. Either way, I stepped into the night like it was waiting for me. The air was cool, the kind that reminds you you're alive. I walked slowly, heels clicking against stone, my heart still steady. I didn't check my phone. I didn't look back. What was left behind wasn't mine anymore. I'd given the truth its moment, and now it would do what truth always does. Linger, echo, ripple through all the spaces they once thought were safe. By the time I got to the car, my hands weren't shaking. I sat there a moment, fingers resting on the wheel, letting the silence wrap around me like a blanket. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't owe anyone closure. What I gave them was more honest than anything they'd given me. A mirror. And while they'd spend the night trying to control the damage, I was already driving away, windows down, face forward. Because what came next wasn't about them. It was finally about me. I never made a statement. Not a post, not a text, not even a passive-aggressive quote on social media. I disappeared from their story the way they had hoped I never would, on my own terms. People talked, of course. They always do. The guests whispered. Mutual friends reached out, some in shock, others pretending not to have known. But I didn't engage. I didn't need to. I'd already said everything I wanted to say, and I'd done it without uttering a single word. Chloe tried to call, then texted, then emailed, each message more frantic than the last. Liam didn't try at all, not directly. I heard through someone that he looked pale for days, barely spoke, and canceled their honeymoon. A part of me wondered if that was guilt or just exposure, the kind of regret that only arrives when the curtain falls and the audience doesn't clap. Either way, it wasn't my business anymore. Their marriage began exactly as it deserved to, stained with silence, born from deceit. And as for me, I moved on, not in the dramatic new boyfriend, look how happy I am kind of way, but in the real way. I started reading again, cooking for myself, waking up without the weight in my chest. I reclaimed the space they both had quietly taken from me, the space in my mind, in my routines, in my heart. Healing wasn't loud, it wasn't linear, but it was mine, and each quiet morning felt like a reminder. Sometimes justice doesn't look like a fight. Sometimes it looks like freedom. I didn't think much about them after that. Not because I forced it, but because they simply stopped living in my mind. Their faces no longer haunted my mornings. Their laughter didn't echo in empty rooms. It was like someone had finally turned off a song that had been playing on loop too long. And once the noise was gone, I could hear myself again. My thoughts, my wants, my voice. I wasn't the woman who begged for honesty anymore. I was the woman who made truth impossible to ignore. About a year later, I got an email from a corporate event organizer. They'd seen one of my older storytelling workshops online and wanted me to speak at their upcoming digital media summit. The topic? The power of narrative timing. I stared at the subject line for a full minute, letting it wash over me. I hadn't told anyone what I did that night, not in full. But somehow the universe had a way of circling back. And this time, it wasn't irony. It was alignment. I said yes, of course. Not because I needed a spotlight, but because I understood something most people don't. Stories only have power when you know exactly when and how to tell them. That wedding wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming the pen. And now, I had a room full of strangers waiting to hear how timing could rewrite everything. So I gathered my notes, opened my laptop, and started writing again. This time, not to remember pain, but to share perspective. That was the real twist. The conference hall was bright and humming with anticipation when I stepped onto the stage. I wasn't nervous, I wasn't performing, I was simply telling a story, one I now carried without pain. I opened with a smile and said, "Timing is everything." A few people chuckled. Most leaned in, and as I spoke about structure, pacing, and the invisible thread that holds an audience in place, I felt something settle inside me. This was the finale they never saw coming. Not the wedding, not the silence, but this, my clarity, my voice, my version. After the session, a woman came up to me. She looked tired, that kind of soul tired that doesn't come from a bad night's sleep. "Your story," she said. It felt like mine. And I realized then that what I did wasn't just for me. It was for anyone who's ever felt betrayed and voiceless, anyone who's been made to doubt their gut. I didn't need to publish the video or post about what happened. It had already reached the people it needed to reach, not just that night, but here, now, in ways I never imagined. Liam and Chloe exchanged rings. That much is true, but I gave them something they didn't plan for. A wedding gift wrapped in silence and delivered with precision. No bows, no glitter, just truth, framed in time. And I walked away, not to erase what happened, but to rewrite what it meant. In the end, they walked down the aisle, but I walked into something far better. Freedom, wholeness, and a story that, finally, belonged entirely to me.